big shout out. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Santi. And everybody else on the chat. If I missed anybody, really, really appreciated it. All right. Now, tell us about the book we were reading, Morgan.
Yeah, so again, I'm Morgan.
Teresa. This is Molly.
And we're so excited. So with Culture Club today, we get to talk about a 2022 book. It's a New York Times bestseller from this year. It's called The Maid. Teresa, do you want to try to pronounce the name of the author?
It's Nita Prose.
Nita Prose, and the book is they compared it to Clue, so like the movie Clue, and it's got that kind of tone.
Molly.
Let me introduce first, so everyone knows.
Okay.
So if you haven't read it, I'm going to give you the overview, and then we'll jump into the critique, and then after that, we're going to read your pages. And I know there's some people in the chat whose pages we're reading tonight, so I'm like really excited. But so the book we read is called The Maid, and it was about a maid at a major hotel, and she's neurodiverse, and it doesn't say what she is, like what's wrong with her, but she's a little, not wrong, but she's different in the way she processes the world. And so she has gaps in her understanding. And so she's very clean and very tidy and very neat and detail-oriented, but she doesn't understand subtlety and communication between different
social
people.
Interactions. She really struggles with social interactions and interpreting what's going on in a social interaction and facial expressions as well.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that was good. In fact, do that. It makes me it's better. So, yeah, so she doesn't understand it. And then obviously she's working at this hotel, and then a murder starts happening. And unbeknownst to her, she ends up, because she doesn't understand things, she's being used to like do naughty things that she would not approve of if she understood. And so people are manipulating her because she doesn't understand things. And so the whole novel is a lot about finding out what happened and discovering who manipulates her, and then people who protect her and rally for her and kind of work to make her life good and safe, and people who try to frame her and set her up for things that she would never do. And so that's kind of, I think, the basis. Ladies, add, what am I missing?
No, I think you got it just about right. I mean, it's about a maid that finds a dead body, and the repercussions that come of that. So.
Yeah. I gotta. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go. One thing I was going to say before we get started, really digging into this. If you haven't read it, we will probably have gross spoilers all the way through and all the way to the end. There are a couple of twists in this book. So just FYI, if you plan to read it and you don't want anything spoiled.
We're going to come back in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, come back in like 10 minutes. But anyways.
I'll set a timer.
Molly, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about, because Morgan started to mention it, is genre. So, right, they said the comparative to this novel was Clue, which is so hard for me because it is... If you go into reading this book and you think I'm going to read a book that's like Clue, you are not reading a book that is like Clue.
100% agree.
The similar is that there is a murder, and you don't know who murdered the person.
The tone is similar. There's a very light tone.
I disagree.
Light.
I don't think this book is light at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I think the book is easy to process. It's easy to read. Mm-hmm. But to me, the tone in Clue is humorous, almost comical, almost madcap, that kind of thing. And this, like Teresa said, is, I don't know, serious. It's not humorous. It's not a comedy.
No.
And it's
the narrator. Okay, so in Clue, one of the differences is that we experience as an audience, I would say, in like third person. Because we're watching from the screen and we're watching everything that happens. And for me, the big difference that would make it so it could feel nothing like Clue, because this is close to
first person.
Close first person to a character who's neurodiverse, which the reason I say it feels light is because she can't process very much depth. And so because of that, the information you get is like, and you know, she's kind of happy and things are very clean, and the things she tends to like worry about for me were lighter. But I can see if you're like worried about her or processing her, that would feel heavy. Is that what you're thinking?
To me, it's not. It's just not light. Like, even when she's focused on different things other than a murder, it's not necessarily light. Like I said, I think it's easy to read. I think the way that the tone and the voice is set up is it is an easily digestible like read. Like, you are going to read it and you understand what is happening. It's not like difficult to read. It is a fly-by easy read.
Yeah. I would agree, but there's no character in here going to be shouting like, let us in, let us in, let us out, let us out, and have all those wonderful quotes. 1 + 1 + 2 + 1 +... That's Clue. This isn't Clue. Yeah. But let's kind of step away from that comparison.
Can I mention the thing that's like really bothering me?
Yes, by all means.
About this novel. Oh, it really, okay, so we try in Culture Club, it's not about whether something is good or bad. It's about whether we can learn from it, what we can learn in terms of our storytelling. But something that really irked me, and ladies agree or disagree, but this was my opinion. I thought that the character's ability to understand and interact in social situations varied more based on seemed to be
plot driven.
Yes, it did not seem consistent to me at all, because there were certain situations where she seemed to have an actual very high level understanding of what was happening, and other situations where it was like she was incredibly low, unbelievably low for her life experiences and the things that she already knew and talked about. And it seemed to be more driven by what the author needed for their plot than what was actually consistent for the character that they had created.
So character consistency, for people who are listening might not understand, is that like if you write a 6-year-old kid in your story, they need to sound like a 6-year-old kid and the whole story.
Unless they get older.
Right. But if there's thank you. If you're 6 to your whole story and then all of a sudden they pop off and start talking like one of my amazing 8th graders, right? And then they all of a sudden pop down to 6th grade, that's inconsistency, right, in their characters. And so what we had is this character she was neurodiverse. She was different. She wasn't supposed to understand. And then like what Molly said, there would be moments where she really understood and then moments where she didn't at all.
And it wasn't there should be no arc on like character starts off as neurodivergent and then they are.
Yeah, you don't
you don't arc out of that. That's not acceptable. However, to Molly's point, there's a significant twist at the end. You find out who the murderer is. And the character, Molly,
the main character is Molly, not
spoiler.
Molly.
No, I'm sorry. Main character Molly. And I'm going to say this is a huge spoiler, so just be aware. She finds out who the killer is very, very early in the story, but that isn't revealed to us until the very end. And she shows in that moment where it's revealed to her who the killer is, she shows extreme understanding of the situation and the nuances around it that led to that. But is inconsistent throughout the rest of the book with that. Go ahead.
I got another example. So what really got me was the first time she is brought in the police station. She has and it's written on the page, a very clear understanding of the situation in which she knows she's a witness. She is not at that point a suspect. She understands this because she's sitting in the front of the police car. She talks about that. She talks about like all these social cues that she's picking up that she makes her understand that she is a witness. She is not in trouble. And while she is there, she also understands that the wife of the murdered person might be a suspect. And at that point, she likes that person. She wants to protect that person. And she has a social understanding to know that that person might be a suspect, know that they might be looking for information against them, and to be very she is very careful about what she does and doesn't say about that person, because she understands all of this stuff. And she even makes a comment about, why would anyone talk to me? I'm the maid. Which shows like an incredible amount of understanding, not just about her position, but also a manipulative thing to say to the detective to understand how to get the detective to stop asking her questions.
To back off. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But then there's a scene where she walks in on like essentially a drug deal.
It is a drug deal. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I almost put the book down at that scene. I was almost like, I can't read this. This is and again, this isn't about what's good or bad, but I will say I almost put the book down.
Can you elaborate on why you almost put the book down there?
I'll let Molly go in and then.
For me, it was hard. Again, I understand that she's neurodivergent, but she also had a lot of coping mechanisms in place. And she also had a lot of rules to like help her understand how to act in certain situations, how to interpret certain situations, phrases that helped her like remember like, okay, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Okay, this is, and then this rule applies to this thing and stuff like that. She also obsessively, like they talk about it, obsessively has watched Columbo, which is an investigative show, has a lot of these situations in it. She walks into a hotel room in the middle of a drug deal. Very obviously to all of us that it's the middle of a drug deal. And nothing is at all weird to her. There are other parts of situations where things happen and she thinks this is kind of weird and I don't know why it's kind of weird. And like you have that moment where she doesn't quite get it and she knows she doesn't get it. But in that moment, like there were social cues that she had picked up before, but she then didn't pick up here. And especially for someone who is follows the rules, to have two people she didn't know in a hotel room, that's against the rules. But that suddenly wasn't important to her, although that's been very important to the character the entire time to follow the rules and to know what the rules are. So to me, it was like this complete break of character, and it really threw me off. I don't know if that's what it was for you, Teresa.
It bothered me so much because it felt like they were calling her stupid. They were calling her stupid, and the other characters were calling her stupid. And the conclusion the reader was almost supposed to reach was not, oh, she's neurodivergent and she's very sheltered. She was raised by her grandmother. Her grandmother sheltered her tremendously. But she still watched Columbo. She still lived in a big city. She still went to school. And I think this idea that she was almost not intelligent enough to be able to pick up on it. That's what I read out of that. And it bothered me so much because this was an intelligent character who just happened to be neurodiverse. And it felt like the author was just going to lean on that as much as she could, but only when it served the plots. And that bothered me so much. If we compare and contrast it to another neurodivergent character, Eleanor Oliphant, that character was consistent throughout and had a very, very nice arc of, she didn't come out of her neurodivergency. She just learned how to function a little bit better in society.
Can you remind us who Eleanor Oliphant is?
It's from the book, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine.
Okay. And so that's an example of a character who doesn't process things, always the way that, I hate to, whatever normal, I don't even know.
Nobody's.
Yeah.
With societal norms.
Right?
Yes.
And so because of that, thank you for Molly, you're so good. But in that book, you can't, to go back to what Teresa said that was so brilliant, you can't arc out of that any more than I can arc out of the fact that I'm highly sensitive and cry all the time. Like, I can't. It's a biological thing, right? It's part of it's my temperament. You're not going to change my nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
It's who I am. And so you don't get to arc me out of that in my life. You just get to give me coping skills or teach me to find my strengths and weaknesses, or have other people learn how to help me, my relationships, right? How to pad that, how to have boundaries, something like healthy boundaries is that's an arc I can get that helps me as somebody, for example, who's highly sensitive. And so I think that's a really powerful point that you're making about when you're writing characters, what are you doing with their arc? Like, are you just doing it for the plot twist? Or are you actually doing it for, like, what does the character development look like, and is it consistent? Because if it's not, even though this book was a New York Times bestseller, you both had a difficult time with it. So I want to, because we've already done 10 pages kind of a critique. So I want to do, or 10 minutes, I'm sorry. I want to do a few minutes of why is it a New York Times bestseller? Why is it connecting with so many people? Why do agents want it? So what is it doing right that we can learn from as authors? I think might be.
It's easy to read.
It's easy to read. It's digestible. It's quick.
It's quick. It has an ending. It has an ending. It has an ending that puts a nice bow on it. The bad guys get their punishments.
It's satisfying.
Good guys, it's satisfying. The good guys win, even though exceedingly unlikely.
So we go from really realistic to really not realistic in how we win. Yeah. Another problem, I think.
There was a sting at the end of it. I know readers love stings. They do. They love the good guys. The cops were kind of bumbling fools, and the good guys managed to figure out a way to solve it.
Yeah.
And that is satisfying. Let's be honest, that is satisfying. We've all watched TV shows that are like, that would never happen in real life. But it's nice. It's nice to have the good guys win. Especially, and that happened in this one.
Yeah, and I especially think in 2022 when my new joke is everything feels about as stable as Amber Heard's marriage to Johnny Depp.
Wow.
And so I think we want justice more. I think we want
justice.
And I think especially we want to root for a neurodivergent character. We want to root for somebody who doesn't get to be in the pages very much. So I think one of the reasons I actually enjoyed this novel is it was refreshing to have a protagonist that was truly unique. It was
It was a unique book.
Yeah, it was unique. It was different. And so I got to think about, okay, so maybe she wasn't consistent the whole way, but guess what? I went through my daily life and I'm around a lot of neurodivergent people and I had more compassion. And it woke me up to making me think, am I the good guy? I hope. Am I the one protecting them and giving them stability and looking out for them? Am I watching to make sure people aren't taking advantage of them? And I feel like that made me a better person. And so I think sometimes we recommend books that we know bring out the good in us,
I 100% agree with what you're saying. 100%. I felt like this book was, and I think Molly and I are on the same page on this one. And I'm not even sure how to phrase this correctly. I don't know how to say it. Using not a trend, but was using neurodivergency to sell books. And I think that's why this book rubbed me so much the wrong way.
There's a lot of critique of that right now. People feeling like diversity, instead of building authentic, wonderful, beautiful, diverse pieces of work, people throwing in diversity as a way to sell. I think that's bothering a lot of people right now.
And yes.
And I guess on that point, but not on that point, was like, I'm sure this maybe worked for many people. One thing I don't usually read mystery novels or investigation novels. And one of the reasons I don't is because the main character is usually like super smart and like way smarter than me. And like knowing things that no person could possibly know. Like if you read Sherlock's Holmes.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is blah, 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 and the shadow and, only blooms in this time. And you're like, nobody knows that. How could I, as a reader, possibly have followed along with this intelligently or came to the same conclusion? I couldn't have. But what this novel does do is, like, you feel like you know more than the character. Like, there are times where you're sitting there like, stop talking to him. Stop talking to the man. He's not your friend. Don't talk to him.
Yeah.
You're not on a date. It's not a date. Stop it.
Oh my gosh.
And Donald Mass talks about that in his book on emotions, that when your readers are, that's called dramatic irony, when we know more than the main character, right? And we're in their head and we're telling them what we want. But that is a major way to get for entertainment, that people seek that. The reader, the person seeks entertainment where they're involved like that, because we are telling the pages this is what we're going to do. So our emotions are getting involved, and so we're actively part of the storytelling.
Yeah,
you see that point.
You see that all the time in horror movies, right? Yeah. Like, you yelling at the character, "Don't go down there. Stop that.
What are you doing? Yeah.
What are you doing? Call the cops," or whatever. But it was a similar, I've not read a lot of books where it was a similar kind of setup. And it wasn't that the character, in that way, actually, I found the character very consistent and believable in the trust or lack of trust they would put in people. I thought that was very consistent.
Yes.
And I appreciated that. And it did, like, right, we're talking about things that did well. I think it was very gripping in those ways, because you were very invested in a frustrating way, but
that's a good point too. You want to know if this character is going to figure out that, you know, the date was not a date. And she did. She figured out that she did. No,
I like that we don't know. So to keep us on time, because I was the timekeeper, let's wrap up with each of us telling our final thoughts, like maybe two reasons we liked the novel, 2 reasons we didn't, maybe, if that feels good, and then we'll go to read our pages. Want me to start? I'll start. Okay, 2 reasons I liked it. I think that it was accessible, and I think that it was a unique novel in the sense that I think the protagonist was actually unique. I've not read that type of protagonist in that type of setting, and I really, really enjoyed that. And then I'll just go back to what I said before, and I think it's true for me. As I read it, it made me more aware of the people around me who might be being taken advantage of by people, and my moral responsibility to protect them and take care of them. And I think anything that draws attention to that and makes me have those feelings is really worthy. 2 things that did not work for me.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
I want to specify in that, I think and Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, when you say protect and guard other people, you mean like anyone, any person, regardless of neurodivergency or not, can get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Anybody
That's what
can.
I mean. Yeah.
And we all need to be aware and conscientious of those around us and what we're doing. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to be specific in that one.
I think that's clear, because you don't want to make it seem like over guardian. But in this, you have to understand the character in this book is overly trusting. And I'm a teacher. So there are a lot of overly trusting students, especially in middle grade, who might trust people who
maybe they shouldn't.
The reality of our world is that, you know, we sometimes have a moral obligation to help people trust people that they shouldn't, or at least, you know, to be aware of other people around us. So I guess I'm talking about heightened social awareness. Yeah. And I think that's important. And also, I should mention, my cousin has this issue, and it made me think a lot about him specifically and what I needed to do to be there for him. So I think, you know, that struck me on a personal level, and I was really thinking about specific people that I care about and what that looks like and how that plays out, right? And then the 2 things that I think were really, really weak for this novel. The first was the good guys, like the way that her caretakers like show up for her is very inconsistent. It comes
Dang it, that was going to be mine.
It's not. it's not built really well into the plot, which I think they did that intentionally to create the twist feel and to say she might not have realized how much they were taking care of her, because, you know, that's just her reality. And the other thing that didn't work for me so much was the way they dealt with her economic situation. So she was left by her grandmother. She'd been taken advantage of financially, and she was having a lot of financial difficulties. And the way that they just kind of glossed over that and made it okay actually to me was very troublesome, because I think there are a lot of people who have serious financial issues, and just to have somebody come save the day, especially when the rest of the book was going for more of a realist kind of analysis, I didn't appreciate that, because I don't think it wasn't a deep enough comment on how money really affects our lives, and how scary money can be for people who have different socioeconomic challenges, but also so certain, cognitive challenges as well. So those were my takeaways. Who's next?
I can go. I'll leave Teresa. So what I appreciated, it was fast to read. I appreciated that it was a unique novel, and I've not read a novel like it before. I can appreciate uniqueness. I can appreciate when I come across something that I read a lot of books. So when you don't know where the plot is going all the time, and where you don't, that's refreshing. It's nice. What I didn't appreciate as much, I didn't appreciate how it felt like, and this is kind of going off of what Morgan said, there were so many deep-seated issues with a lot of things going on, whether it was socioeconomic, whether it was cognitive neurodiversities, whether it was immigration, whether it was
We didn't even talk about the
relationship.
immigration
Yeah.
piece.
like relationship and spousal abuse and drug industry and whatchamacallit, money laundering, all this stuff, and like really serious, complicated, deep-seated issues. And it came so close to making commentary on things, and then made no commentary on anything, and glossed, like it just seemed to shove everything in, but on a very superficial level, and not actually have anything in it. I don't know if that makes sense unless you have to read
No,
the
it
novel.
does. It does.
And my second thing that didn't quite work for me is I thought the secondary characters were very flat and quite weak.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, they were all, I thought, very one-dimensional, very predictable. I've got a third thing. This is my pet peeve. The author clearly has some words that she likes.
You texted us this last night.
And
That
it
editor
doesn't
should have
matter.
caught that.
It doesn't matter which character is talking. They all use some of the same phrases and some of the same very specific and kind of uncommon words and phrases. And it just sits there. And like when you read In Flagrante 5 times, and it's 3 different characters saying it at different times, and it's like, no, people don't use that word that often. Maybe one person would, but like, okay, so that's my, like, that's a small pet peeve. Like, that was an editor very
Faux
easy
pas.
fix that didn't happen. But anyway, bigger things were the other two. Teresa.
All right, I'm going to try to go fast. So I liked seeing a neurodivergent character. I don't think it was well done. I would like to see more neurodivergent characters with it being better done. The final twist at the very end, I didn't see that one coming. I don't think it was necessarily well done, but I didn't see it coming. So, props for that. It was a fast read. I do appreciate that. I think the things that I didn't like about it, I'm with Molly on the commentary on the socioeconomic piece of this, it's the upstairs and the downstairs. A lot of that, this idea of this upstairs and the downstairs, the maid and the cook and the doorman, as opposed to the rich hotel goers, but none of that was addressed. It was completely glossed over. Go ahead.
It's like The Parasite, but take all of the commentary out of it. You guys seen The Parasite? Okay, never mind. Viewers, if you know what I mean.
If listeners have seen The Parasite, you need to tell Molly right now so she feels like someone
Heard and seen. Yeah. Anyway, keep
Yeah.
going, Teresa.
Last thing I didn't like, I did not like I think we called them the saviors, the guardians, the whatnot, coming out of the blue and just being like, and here's the pretty bow on everything. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I did not like that at all, at all. So, yep.
So, would we recommend the Maid? I'll let you decide from our comments. Are we,
Yeah.
Molly, final
I
comments?
wanna pull out a comment here from Tiffany, who goes and says that, you know, we didn't actually get into a lot of spoilers. We actually kept ourselves pretty spoiler free. But we actually, she thinks, or they think that while we're not actually explaining anything, it sounds kind of intriguing. In which case, I would say, read it for yourself and decide. Right?
And come on our Discord and tell us what you think on our Discord.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us if you loved it and what are some things we missed, because that would be really awesome.
There was a lot to this book, a lot more we could have kept talking about, and we won't because we need to read pages.
Because we want to read pages. I want to go first. Can I go first?
Yes, by all means. I'm super excited.
First, I'm going to preface this. We're now switching to where we read and critique some pages, which we're very excited to do. Quick reminder, we keep pages anonymous. If you're in the chat, you hear your thing, you want to say who you are welcome to, but we're not going to expose you, so to speak. Also, we operate on an even better if policy here, so while we do say what we like, we also will give real critique as well in a very, what we try to be, positive and supporting environment. There's my disclaimer. Go, Morgan.
All right. Okay, I gotta set the tone.
Set the tone.
Go. Okay, everybody. I peered out of the wooden doors, which were swinging in the cold desert winds and the dark black night outside, waiting for another customer to arrive. Waiting. I hear the rusty hinges creak on that pine wood door. I slowly wiped the spilled alcohol off my cuffs and faced the truth. It was pitch dark and no one was going to walk the old dusty trail to a saloon in the middle of the high plains. I sighed and stood up. The floorboards creaked as I walked towards the bat-wing doors at the end of the bar. They squeaked as I steadily pushed them open. A screech of wood sounding as it rotates on the rusted metal swivels and the edge of the faded oak doorframe. A sickening chill rushed down my spine as I took the step out of the building. It was like the other blasts of wind that I had felt before when I stepped out of the bar into the cold night, only this time different. This one made me feel uneasy, like something or someone was watching me. The wind blowing sounded like the howling of coyotes. It was a sinister thing to hear. And as I turned back to face the door, I grabbed the wooden sign that read open. I flipped it on its back, and the disgruntled change from the open to closed only brightened the brought the ill feeling back. I turned around to face the open fields and try to ease my mind. Only, as soon as I turned around, the rustling of the dried-out shrub and brush swaying in the bone-chilling atmosphere grabbed me. And then it was quiet until some sound filled the area. It was a darker sound than the wind, like chains rattling in the darkness out front, and I looked closely to see a man, swaying at his horse's will. He was carrying a small lantern that I had noticed just a bit later, and he was dressed in all black, a black hat, black shirt, black pants, black belt, black boots. But the darkest thing was the midnight, deep black duster he was wearing, and I could tell he was weary and something else.
Nice.
Very nice. All right, we usually start with what we like real quick. I can start.
I'm going to set a 3-minute timer because we're working on this.
Awesome.
The stages are working on it.
Great atmosphere. Love it. And great use of sound. I loved all of the sound in here. Very distinctive. Made it feel visceral, like I was in the moment with that character. Loved that.
I loved that it was clear it was a Western. The setting was well established. The genre was well established. Like, the genre is clear from the first pages. The setting is clear from the first pages. And while we don't know what the stakes are, there is a feeling of stakes here. So there is a feeling that he's not safe, that something is going to change. So we're in their regular life, and then something is going to change. So you can feel the inciting incident coming. So it's really building appropriately the way stories should. It's setting me in the genre, putting me in the setting, getting a feel for the protagonist's normal life, and now something that makes me want to keep reading. Teresa, what do you think?
I liked the repetition in it, the darkness, the black. I thought it was really, really a well-painted story. You really could, well, you couldn't see what was going on because it was dark, but you really had a really good feeling about what was going on. And it wasn't a good feeling. It was a bad feeling, but you really got the tone. That's the word I'm going for, tone.
Yeah, the tone was good. Tone is good. Genre is good. All right, even better if.
For me, even better if, like, this is good, and the suggestions that I have are like next level, right? Like, how do we progress to the next level? So some things to consider is now you get to, like, your bones are here, and now you can do some fun things and play. So, for example, play with your syntax. Try shortening down some sentences really, really short. Like, you have one, a screech of wood, sounding as it rotates on the rusted metal swivel, right?
Nice.
Maybe just a screech of wood, period. Like, that anticipation, that tension, really, really short sentences that maybe aren't even, like, grammatically correct, but you can do. Right? You're in fiction, you can have fun. You can have fun with your syntax, fun with your sentence structures, fun with noises if you want, right? You're describing a screech of wood. Maybe you can use the word screech, right? Like, what is the word? Onomatopoeia?
Yep.
Yep. So there are things that you can do that, like, right now you're going to go, boom, elevate, next level. Not that it's bad now, but, like, okay, bring it up another notch.
Well, I think everything needs to edit, and I would say the sound is solid, so I would go for smell or texture. I think the sound here is solid. I think the visual is solid. So I think it's time to bring in other senses. So we talk about a lot of the wind. Well, winds bring smells, and they bring dust, and they bring feelings of, So I think there's some work we could do with feeling that I think would tell us more about our character. So instead of keeping our five senses external, which the work externally is done here, I think the wind catching something like, I don't know if it's a male or female, I don't know if it's a blouse or a jacket that we're dealing with. So learning a little bit more about
the character.
So I think for me, if they smell something, it could tell us a little bit more about the character, what they're wearing, who they are, their age, their gender, those things. And then the other big thing I would add, even better if, there's double uses of prepositional phrases in this, and simply cutting those prepositional phrases out is going to make them pop. And actually, it would create the short sentences that Molly picked. Like, I liked the long sentence Molly had, so I would never want you to touch that. It was my favorite
it was just
sentence
the first thing I saw on the page. So
you
don't have
page.
to. Yeah.
So please don't touch that one, because that had a really original use of, like, rusty and hinge, and it had some really nice tonal words. But there are times when you were talking about in the outside, and you told us several times that it was outside, that you didn't need to repeat. And the prepositional phrase that seemed to be a little bit of the crux was the preposition in. So it would be, just cutting those down, literally pulling them out, and you would be surprised what it would do to pop what's on the page. Teresa, what are your final thoughts?
Final thought, I would like to see, rather than being told how the character is feeling what the character is feeling. So there's a comment, this one made me uneasy. Well, what was going on in the body? Do we have, the butterflies in the stomach, the heart pounding? Yes, ma'am.
They do both. So they show and tell. For example, you've got a sickening chill rushed down my spine as I took the step out of the building. That is what Teresa, that's what Teresa wants.
Brilliant.
Yes.
That's brilliant writing. So then you can cut the uneasiness. Instead, you can just say it twists in my stomach like a knife.
Exactly. And I see this a lot with writers when I'm doing edits, is that they'll have, like, that beautiful language of the chill going down the spine, and then are concerned that the reader's not getting it. So then they'll make a comment about anxiety or something like that. always, always, always go with what's going on in the body if you can, and cut out any like descriptions of I felt anxious. Another one, I could tell he was weary. And that was the last sentence, and maybe there's going to be something else coming that like explains that. But if it was just I could tell he was weary, how? In what
Yeah,
way?
was
Is
he
it, you know,
was he
it
almost falling
drooping?
off his horse? You know.
You know?
Or did
Yeah.
his voice crackle in the night? Was his voice raw?
Yeah.
You know, what is that like? So
He dropped the
Bags under
reins.
the eyes. Yeah.
yeah. So as we move on to the next one, I would love to hear from everyone on YouTube watching some things that they enjoyed about this piece or selection. And if the author is present and they want to tell us, that would be awesome too.
We do have some applause in the audience, so people liked that. So
Yeah.
great job. Is it me or Teresa next?
Go for it. You go.
All right, I'll go. Okay, I gotta bring this other laptop up so I can, see appropriately. Oh, excuse me, sorry.
Do you need some water?
No, I'll be okay. In 1466, a paper was sent anonymously to the colonial government and reached them in 14 days and 15 nights. One beautiful night with a golden moon, 3 people were injured by the city nurse. In the morning, with a lovely sunrise, the same 3 died to the rays of the foul curse that wrought upon the small world they existed in. The funeral for these useless and ignorant people was settled, and they were to be thrown in the city well. The idiotic and timelessly unfortunate people were found with illegal potions that were said to have drunken a man, but slowly and painfully kill him. Once these carry-offs were found, the funeral for these ignorant fools was called off. Finally, when the paper reached a government status, it was denied and sent back as denied and unable to send back. It was tyranny for this young idealist. She wanted to put an end to these horrible, unprecedented deaths of this wretched curse. One night, she was out sprinting to her small hut in the small town of Livingston. Surrounded by waves of pain and despair, she made it into her hut in time for the rays to hit. You might believe she almost cried, figuring out how close she was to her demise. She cried because she was hit by the deadly rays of pain. Prepared for what might come next, her vision blurred, fading in and out of reality, finally resting as the idea of saving this cursed and heavily unfortunate town disappeared with her.
I love the voice of this author because it's truly unique.
Mm-hmm.
We don't read.
It's a good voice.
This voice is good. This author has a unique story to tell and a unique way to tell it, and the use of verbs. The words aren't. I think sometimes they're a little not quite right because we're trying for a little higher stuff. Some of the words are amazing, like the idea of rot and curse, and then the idea of judging the people who died as idiotic. That's really bold and cool. So you immediately feel bad for these people who are dead, and then they're deemed idiots, and then they have this potion, and it's like, what is going on here? And how does it link to the paper? And I have a lot of intrigue to find out how all of this works, and I appreciate that it feels older. It feels the time, 1776, the stretch to get us into a different mindset in a different time, and I liked that. I thought that was nice.
I would agree with that. I think, 1466. I think I think the author is doing a really good job of kind of writing in a not quite so modern style, and that is good. That's a really good point.
I want to talk about some of the lovely choices in words here and in cadence.
Yeah,
so I could not help smiling. This sentence, you might believe she almost cried, figuring out how close she was to her demise.
It's beautiful.
It's deep. That's really deep.
And if you're not writing poetry, consider it. Because that has the right cadence and, you're rhyming here, but in a subtle way. Oh, it's lovely. Lovely.
Yeah, the interrhyme's good. So I think, yeah, there's a melody to it that reminds me a little bit of Tennyson.
And all the numbers that were used in the beginning, really, like, that's what I'm meaning about choices here. You're making very interesting choices that lead to a very interesting, like when you're reading it, a very interesting cadence. It's almost magical realism, almost poetry at times. It's working in that way.
There's
Magical
nice
realism, yeah.
juxtaposition. Oh, I said it right. Between things like in the morning with the lovely sunrise, the same three died to the rays of the foul curse. That's just lovely there.
Yeah, because it's layered, because you feel good and then bad at the same time. And so you're saying, okay, human, you can hold two emotions and I'm going to make you.
Yeah.
And
The author does
kind of,
I was gonna say the author does a great job of that, of making you feel one way and then the other in the same sentence.
yeah.
And you
I
brought
like
it up, right? They died, but then they're ignorant and they're idiotic.
Yeah.
Useless and idiotic.
I mean, tyranny for this young idealist.
Yeah, forcing us to do two things at the same time. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well done.
So even better if a little too much, I think, for me. So condensed because it's not a poem. So I need a little more simplicity between it. So I have a little bit more idea what's going on. So I'm interested in and I have intrigue, but it's a little too much juxtaposition. So I want it. I want a little bit firmer idea of like kind of who I'm rooting for. I mean, great job of intrigue, great job of mystery, great job of getting me to read more. But I'm really confused about how the papers fit in, like what the correspondence is. And since it starts with that correspondence, and I know that's important, I shouldn't be confused about that. I need to know the rest of it. I really like, but how do the papers link to these deaths? And what's going on? Who's getting the correspondence? Who has the correspondence? I feel like I need a little more clarity there.
Yeah, I'd like to know more of what's coming next. I'm actually not sure I can make very many comments on this one without knowing what's coming next. If this is almost a poem to start it off, and then we're going to end up, with like, and now chapter 1, and it's providing a little bit more of that framework of what's going on in the world. Or if this style is going to continue. If the style is going to continue, I agree with Morgan that we need a little bit more of a framework here. But I'd like to see what comes next before I can make that comment.
Yeah, that's good. It's really original stuff, and it's nice for us to see original stuff.
My biggest one is sort of like what Morgan said. There seems to be a change in. There's a big shift. From the first section until it gets to one night she was out sprinting. And to me, like that turn was pretty hard, right? I'm talking about the papers and I'm talking about the dead people and their funerals, but then they're not funerals and their potion. And I'm like, okay. And then the camera has zoomed in to one person. And that's okay. I just needed a little bit, personally, I just needed a little bit less fast of a zoom, right? I'll extend the analogy here, right? It's like the camera's like kind of going all over the place and then zooms in, and it might make you a little queasy because of how fast it's going. And that's not quite what I'm saying, but just slow it down a little bit for me, right? Personally, me. Again, Teresa's right. It depends on what comes next. But for me, I just want a little bit more in a few moments, and I worry that the ladies have frozen. Oh, they can hear. We can hear you. You're fine.
You're frozen.
You're frozen.
Yeah, but not for our viewers. I'm streaming off of my computer. You're back. You're back, by the way. But yeah, it's so hard on first pages sometimes because who knows what comes on page 2.
Exactly.
I just want to give a round of applause to Gold Stories so far. Like, they're amazing. I really appreciate people sharing their work with us. That takes a lot of courage, and it's fun. Hopefully this is fun for you to like see what's working and what we can strengthen. Any comments, Molly, that we need to?
Yeah. Sue says that she would like to read more. Tiffany's saying that I think she's saying that this is hers, so great job, and that she's nearly finished with the first chapter. And so I'm going to echo the next comment, which is great. Keep going. That's the number one thing in writing. Keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome. Should we do one more?
I think so. I
All
think
right.
so.
We have the time. Let's do it. Let's crank
All
it out.
right. So this one is from the survivors.
No, it's anonymous, remember?
It's the title of the work.
Oh, okay. Good.
I triple checked this.
Thanks, good.
I was like, my heart like stopped. I'm like, no.
No, I was tricking. You passed the test. Good job.
I do that all the time to my students, and they totally know, but they're sweet about it.
All right, here we go.
Hit us.
John stood, resting his elbows on the top of the stucco wall. He faced into the stiff breeze that rolled in from the deep gray-blue ocean. The wind whistled in his ears, rising and falling in pitch, as he shifted his gaze from one end of the wide sandy beach to the other. His long black hair, peppered gray at the temples, blew across his face as he turned. The sun rose behind him, and his shadow drew long down the beach towards the crashing waves. Happy birthday. John turned to face the voice and smiled broadly. Cameron, his personal steward, carried a wooden tray with 2 large cups of coffee, a steaming carafe, and a large fruity mimosa. You don't turn 1,059 every day, John replied. He eyed the mimosa, but then reached out and picked up the coffee. Well, you don't look a day over 650, Cameron said, setting down the tray on the small concrete table. He sat, cradled the second cup of coffee, and inhaled the rich aroma. John turned back toward the sea, absently holding the cup but not drinking it. What are you thinking about? Cameron asked. Instead of answering, John turned and walked the 2 steps to the table and sank into the chair. He took a long swallow of the coffee and then sighed deeply. Honestly, I'm just so damn old, he smiled. Cameron chuckled and clinked the coffee cup against the mimosa. You should drink this. It has more vitamins than the coffee. It's not the vitamins I need. He paused and looked deep into Cameron's eyes. I'm thinking of stepping down. I've done my service. I think it's time for me to enjoy my retirement. And that's it.
Molly, you want to go first?
I will go first. I love this dynamic between the 2 characters. It's adorable. It's believable. It's intimate. It leads you. It's intimate without telling you too much too fast about their relationship. Mm-hmm. There's little details in there like that really speak to characterization. He's choosing the coffee, not the mimosa. Right? He turns back to the sea. He doesn't talk until someone asks him. All these little choices that I really appreciated in terms of characterization and just creating this very intimate little meeting.
Yeah, we're very rooted in the scene, which I really appreciate, without it taking away from the action. And there's not a lot of action in this. We're really setting the stage, but we know what we know that the character looks like. John has long black hair, peppered gray at the temples, long enough to blow across his face. We know it's his birthday. We know that there is a small concrete table. What happened?
Molly's
Nothing.
doing her face with her hair. And you're
Let the hair go across your face. Yeah.
We know that there's a small concrete table. We know that there's a tray. We know that there's coffee mugs and a steaming carafe. It's a wooden tray. We're really seeing the scene and the world without a ton of description, which I really enjoy, especially early on.
He's weaved it in
You're
there.
just getting enough. You're just getting enough to, as the reader, be able to visualize without being like, come on, get on with the scene. I don't care that they have blue eyes and they're wearing a leather shirt and pants and whatever it is.
Yeah, and
How
I
many
don't know where I
leather
was
shirts
going.
have you seen?
I don't know where I was
Wearing
going
leather
with that
shirts.
one.
it's just
Listeners,
like
if you
Teresa
wear
like
leather shirts, that's an outfit on the beach too. Like that's the extra point. Is your leather shirt is on the beach.
a white blousey shirt blowing in the breeze, got very Fabio thing going.
And then the
That's
leather
what I meant.
pants.
That one, you'd have leather pants.
Morgan.
No, I think the characterization is done great, and I like the tone. The tone is clear. Intimacy is nice. The characterization is good. I agree that we're grounded in the setting. I would pull back the setting just a little bit, and let the characters pop. So, for example, like you've got the part where it's like, the breeze, and then the setting part I would kind of pull back on is the coffee. Well, I like the idea that the coffee is like a metaphor. If it's going to be like the empty cup and then the aroma, and then if it's going to be like signified that their relationship's empty or their life is empty, if that's supposed to be a metaphor for retirement, I think it needs to be worked just a little bit more so it's not so condensed in the selection. And I think it needs to be worked in more with the dialogue or more as a reflection of the characters, unless to feel like a setting. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It does. It does. You went straight to the even better if.
Yeah, I may or may not know that this author is listening and wants me to do that.
That's fair. My even better if is there's just a couple of small, really, really small grammar and word choices that, if changed, I think could even elevate this even further. Like, he paused and then looked deep into Cameron's eyes. Looking deep into someone's eyes is kind of a cliche phrase. Consider whether you want it or not, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, can I please? Sorry, Molly.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That would be such a great job to notice something about him that only he has, like dimples, right? Or,
Crow's feet.
Yeah, crow's feet that are cute to him and only him. I think that would take something that was cliche and move it to a whole new level, because it would be something that's like, other people might not even, like you're saying, crow's feet. Most people might not like those lines, by your eyes, but maybe it's the smiles you've given them through the years that are those lines, so it's beautiful to you because it's the 1,000 laughs you've had together, and that's kind of what I was saying about the coffee too. If you could make that like, empty, like my career now or something, so that the metaphor is like a little stronger maybe. Or the reflections a little deeper. Sorry, Molly, you got me really.
No, you're fine. The other thing I was going to say is there's a couple other places where when you author switch to like the person doing a thing, it's very noun verb. Cameron so-and-so carried a wooden tray. He eyed the mimosa. He said, comma, setting, like there's a sentence structure that you're not burying as much as you could. So just consider it the grammatical choice that could bring it up. It's not bad. Like, I'm not saying what's here is bad, right? Something to consider moving forward. Teresa.
Even better.
So without knowing what's coming after, and I suspect this is going to be a lot of these critiques for me. I am not confident in the starting it on the birthday. Because, and I say this as an editor, I feel like a lot of times what I am recommending is after I'm done with the book and I go back because I always go back and I'll reread the first chapter and find out if what is done in the first chapter, if there's a payoff to it, or if we're just starting the first chapter with almost a fake inciting event because we're trying to get the story going and we're trying to start with a bang. And unless the happy birthday thing matters to the story, then I would recommend dropping it and starting with, I'm thinking of stepping down. I've done my service. It's time for me to enjoy my retirement.
I think you're right in the way of he's clearly setting up that this character arc has to do with his age and his relationship to whether he's going to continue with service or not. Mm-hmm. Whether it's his time to step down or it's his time to keep going. And I think in that way, if you've set up a promise and if you don't keep on that promise, I would maybe be disappointed. But I think the happy birthday is an okay way to do that. I don't mind that per se. I don't mind that.
Yeah, and again, it might work perfectly seeing what's going on with the rest of it. All I have is just this though.
I like the idea that one of the things that that tells us, if they make that choice, that we assume as the reader is, on the birthday, there's only one person that matters to them. So, because normally birthdays are very busy events, or, you know, like who you choose to spend your birthday with says a lot about who's in your life at that time. So if this is a way of saying, like, there's really just them and it's them against the world, I think that sends a really clear message about that. And then that's why they're choosing to make that decision with just this other person. So depending on how the relationship with the other person, what kind of arc that journey goes on,
That's
I think
point.
that that's something that this author should consider.
Yes, and I'm not disagreeing at all. I just want to make sure that the birthday is pivotal to, it doesn't have to be pivotal to the plot, but it's not going to be a single mention and then that's it. Because if you're starting with it.
I mean, I think it's a good conceit because, one, a lot of people tend to reevaluate their lives on their birthday. So it's a believable thing for me. But also, it very clearly, the author is using it to set up, this guy's old. This guy is 1,000 and whatever. And to put that in dialogue is hard. You have to have a premise for why they're saying it in dialogue. And a birthday is a good premise. So
why not just say, and I'm just splitting hairs, so now I'm just being annoying. But you could say, I'm thinking of stepping down. I've done my service. I think it's time for me to enjoy my retirement. Yeah, you know, you are 1,059 years old. It's about time, dude.
Yeah.
Come on, put me first.
And I think
I'm Giselle, or we're gonna divorce if you don't put me first. Sorry.
What has happened?
I think on that point, the author could throughout the age just a little bit more. I think we could have a little more of that. Just a little, like, you know, just a beat more of reminding us. Because we have more, I think, beats with like the literally, the coffee and the atmosphere than we do with the age. And I think considering that clearly is an issue, it could take just a moment, you know. In fact, it could be you've already enjoyed 1,000, you know, sunrises or 1,000 cups of coffee or something that could, wow, you know, that's old. I feel old and feeling it. Didn't feel it so much in 2006, feel it more in 2007 or whatever, just to kind of let us sit with that a little bit more, because that is a shock to our human brains, you know, to try to digest what that would be like to live that long, I think.
But I will also say, this is only between 250 and 300 words. And it's not possible to cram everything kind of in on it. So I think this is really a really good start. I would like to know what comes next. And that is the entire points of a first page. So nice job.
I would keep reading. I, for one, who in YouTube, tell us if you would keep reading. And then Molly, are there any comments about this that we need to read?
Not yet. Mostly just reminding us that we were frozen. But we unfroze.
Does anybody want to make any final questions or comments about this work, or if the author is here and they want to ask questions or claim that they're here?
I think
this is. Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Nope, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, those of you who are viewing it, this is a moment we're going to start wrapping up the episode soon. So if you have any final comments or questions about the pages we read or the novel that we discussed, again, The Maid, please put them in now, or you're going to lose it. You're going to lose your opportunity. You'll have to put a YouTube comment later, or you'll have to go to our Discord.
Yeah.
You'll have to interact with us in different ways, other than I can see you now.
And this would be a great time if you like this. We sure have enjoyed having you and doing this. It would be mean a lot to us if you wouldn't mind liking our video and maybe subscribing to us.
And tell your friends that are writers, tell them we're doing this. Tell them to submit their first pages.
We do have a question about when is this ending? My parents would like to know. We're wrapping up right now.
We're done.
We're done. You're good. For those of you still listening, thank you for being with us. Thank you for enjoying this time with us. And like my counterpart said, 5-star, subscribe, all that kind of stuff so people can find us, join our Discord, submit your pages so you can be read next time. Tell us what book or movie or film you'd like us to critique next time. Otherwise, have a great day. Ladies, final thoughts?
Bye now. Nope, I think that's it. Bye now.
Bye.
Yay!